Good evening, councillors, and welcome to this meeting of the Planning Committee for Monday, the 1st of June, which is being undertaken virtually in accordance with the recent enacted government regulations during the current coronavirus pandemic. Before we start the meeting, can I please remind all members of the following. Please ensure you mute your microphones when not speaking. Please remain focused on the topic being discussed. Please try to avoid repeating points which have already been made, and please avoid interrupting other councillors and respect the position of the chair. At the beginning of each item, I will ask councillors who wish to speak on that item, and I will keep a note of them, as will the Democratic Services team. I will then call councillors in the order in which I have listed them, and the method of voting will be by a roll call. Members, I will remind you of this when we get later into the meeting. Please remember that this meeting is still being broadcast in the normal way via Facebook Live, so members of the public can still hear what is being said and decided upon. With these matters in mind, can I call on Mark Devin to do a roll call of all councillors and officers to ascertain who is in attendance?
Thank you, Chair. Can I ask councillors in attendance? Oh, sorry, somebody on. Sorry about that. Councillors in attendance, state if you're present, please. So, Councillor Lyons.
Yes, I'm here.
Thank you. Councillor Williams.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Bialik.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Branston.
Present.
Thank you very much. Councillor Fole.
Present.
Thank you very much. Councillor Gassane. Councillor Gassane. I'll come back to Councillor Gassane. Councillor Harvey.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Mrs. Henson. Councillor Mrs. Henson.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Mitchell.
Present.
Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Morse.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Sheldon.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Sutton.
Present.
Thank you. And Councillor Sparks.
Present.
Thank you. And Councillor Gassane.
Present.
Thank you. Now I'm just going to do officer roll call. Officers in attendance, when I call your name, just please state if you're present. So Director Bindu Arjun.
Present.
Thank you. Assistant Service Lead Planning City Development Roger Clotworthy.
Present.
Thank you. Principal Project Manager Development Paul Jeffrey.
Present.
Thank you. We have Democratic Services Officers, myself, Mark Devin and Howard Bassett also in attendance, and Councillor Hannaford is speaking under standing orders. And I can confirm, Chair, that we are fully quorate to proceed with the meeting.
Thank you. Thank you, members. Now, the first item on the agenda this evening is apologies. Do we have any apologies?
No, we are fully quorate, Chair.
Thank you. The next item of business is the minutes of the planning meetings held on the 27th of April and the 4th of May 2020. Are members happy to approve these minutes as a correct record of the proceedings?
Yes.
This we will have to do by a roll call by Mark again, please.
Thank you, Chair. So Councillor Lyons.
Yes, I'm happy.
Councillor Williams.
Agreed.
Thank you. Councillor Bialik.
Agreed.
Councillor Branston.
Agreed.
Councillor Fole.
Agreed.
Councillor Gassane.
Agreed.
Councillor Harvey.
Agreed.
Councillor Mrs. Henson.
Agreed.
Councillor Mitchell.
Approved.
Councillor Morse.
Agreed.
Councillor Sheldon.
Agreed.
Councillor Sutton.
Agreed.
Councillor Sparks.
Agreed.
Agreed. As the minutes have been approved, Chair.
Thank you, Mark. I will sign them one day when we can get to them. The next item on the agenda is item number 3, which is declaration of interests. If any members have any disclosable pecuniary interests that relate to business on the agenda and have not already included it on the register of interest, to declare them before discussion takes place on any particular item. The next item of business is item 4, Local Government Access to Information Act 1985 for the exclusion of press and public. There aren't any part 2 items on the agenda. This will take us on now to item 5, which is the first of the applications, and I think Paul Jeffrey, you are presenting this one, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Okay, sorry for the delay there. Hopefully, Chair, can you see that? Can you see what's on my screen?
I can see Planning Committee 1st of June. That's it.
Okay.
Yes, the application is now coming up.
Thank you. Okay, members, this application is for Foxhays, the location plan in front of you. Previously, the site was occupied by Foxhays Primary School and more recently the Steiner School on a temporary basis. The site is currently vacant. The site is bounded to the north by Knoll Drive and Rome Way, Pine Close is to the east and Truro Drive is to the south. Access was originally granted in 2011. An outline planning permission was granted in 2019 for residential development, including the provision of the vehicular access. This outline application included a Section 106 agreement, which required an affordable housing provision of 35% in accordance with local plan policy. A summary of all the conditions and 106 requirements from the outline consent are contained within the officer report.
Your call is being forwarded to a Mytel voicemail system.
In terms of like
Extension 4.
in terms of like just showing some photographs of the site, just running through, just to note actually the sloping nature of the site and the number of trees within the site, which have been significant in the overall layout and design of the scheme. So just carry on with the photographs, so showing the site location. In terms of the site layout, the application seeks reserved matters approval for a total of 31 dwellings comprising of 10 one-bedroom properties, 15 two-bedroomed, 4 three-bedroomed and 2 four-bedroomed. The scheme includes a total of 52 car parking spaces. 12 affordable housing are proposed with 8 social rent and 4 shared ownership, which equates to 39% provision on the site. The scheme is considered acceptable in highway terms, subject to detailed conditions. Lloyd Oriel, the County Highway Officer, can respond to any specific matters of detail if required, because he is also at this meeting. The scheme also provides improved accessibility with the formalising of access through the site between Gloucester Road and Pine Close.
Your call is being forwarded.
The next slides show the proposed house designs for the scheme. As
Please leave a message at the tone. When finished.
There's the housing types. As the report sets out, the principle is intended to respond to the natural features of the site in terms of the sloping nature and the existing trees. Consequently, the house design includes split level and position of windows to prevent overlooking from between proposed dwellings within the site and in relation to the existing properties. It is considered that the scheme will not cause a detrimental loss of amenity to existing local residents which border the site. just a more specific example of some of the split level properties that are contained within the site. And this shows plot 8, which is alongside the central area of public open space. The main area of public open space is around the perimeter of the site. And indeed, this shows the relationship in terms of 14 and 15. Significant changes are shown in relation to neighbouring properties, this one down in Pine Close. This cross section also just does show, and I think if you can see that the highlighter shows is a buffer around the edge of the site, which left between the rear of garden and the existing neighbouring properties. The intention is to retain as much existing vegetation as possible around the boundaries to help integrate the development into the area and retain it for ecological value. The applicants Live West have stated their commitment to maintaining this area. In terms of a summary, outline planning permission accepted the principle of development in this site for residential development. Whilst it is noted that significant numbers of objections have been received from local residents, it is considered that the scheme does seek to provide a layout and design of dwellings which responds well to the characteristics of the site and therefore is to be welcomed. The officer recommendation is therefore for approval, subject to conditions as stated in the report and the update sheet. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Paul. Does any member of the Planning Committee have any questions of clarification? Please say now.
Rachel, I'll just say that while I can hear everything fine, Skype is not loading these images onto my tablet. It's for me, again, it's something of a disadvantage using Skype.
Yeah, that's the same with me. I'm not getting the pictures, but I do now of the picture.
I'm sorry, but there's nothing I can do about that now, but thank you for pointing this out.
No, I pointed this out at the last 2 meetings, but that's okay.
Rachel, Councillor Lyons, I have a question of
That's Councillor Harvey, is it?
It is indeed, Councillor Harvey.
Right. Carry on then, please.
On page 26, of the report, it says RSPB have requested there should be a 1-to-1 ratio between the number of bird nest bricks and dwellings on the site. Please can somebody explain to me what a bird nest brick is?
Yeah, Councillor Harvey, they are sort of special integrated bricks. So they're actually, they look like bricks, but they've got holes in them that allow swifts to nest in them. So essentially a very small hole within the brick.
Right, and that's in a building, is it? They're not they're not hanging around in a tree or anything like that. They are.
They're integrated within the building itself.
Bricks in the building. Thank you, Paul.
Chair, Councillor Bialik.
Yes, Councillor Bialik.
Thank you. A number of residents and the objections has been in relation to highways, and I just want to understand and ensure that highways in Devon have been fully consulted. I know Lloyd is on the call with us today from County, and that this meets all the relevant criteria in this area, because there is some concern about car usage in there. I know the area, obviously.
To a Mitel voicemail system. Extension 4.
That's not me, by the way, whoever that is. That's not me. So, yeah, I just want to make sure we're okay with the highways.
Can Lloyd answer that one?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, if that's Lloyd, yes.
Yes, it is Lloyd. To answer Councillor Bialik's question, this site has got outline consent already, so the principle of traffic movements in and out of this site has already been accepted by members. So all highways issues have been looked at, and bearing in mind this is a brownfield site, the traffic generation coming out of this site is likely to be minimal.
Thank you, Lloyd. Has anybody else?
Thank you, Chair.
Has anybody else got any points of clarification? Right, thank you. Now we have Councillor Hannaford speaking under Standing Order 44. Councillor Hannaford, would you like to speak now, please? Mark, have we got Councillor Hannaford?
Yeah, he's there. I'll just double check. Can you, Councillor Hannaford? Councillor Hannaford, are you there, please? What's he doing?
Are we still having trouble getting Councillor Hannaford?
Yeah, Councillor Hannaford, are you there?
Can I suggest that, Mark, you try and get hold of Councillor Hannaford, and we go on. We do have a member of the public speaking on this application, so as we are unable to get hold of Councillor Hannaford at the moment, can I ask Adam Priest if he would like to speak now in support of the application?
Unfortunately, he still hasn't answered the phone, unfortunately, Chair, so we may have to pause for a moment.
Hello, can you hear me?
We now have Councillor Hannaford.
Hello.
Yes, Councillor Hannaford, would you like to
yes.
speak on this application then, please?
Yes, please. If I may, Chair, if you can hear me.
Yes, we can.
Thank you. I'm basically here for some points of clarification in highways issues, but overall, I am speaking in favour of this application. I'd like to start by addressing the issue that I understand was brought up at a previous meeting in one of the working parties, and in some of the objections that this site is open space, and that's not so. I think it's always been understood that this former school site would have had to be redeveloped at some point, and one way or another I've been involved with this site since 2005, and some years ago I chaired the Foxhays Community Forum that was going to see a second children's centre for the West Decks and a pharmacy with some housing mixed in on this site. And that was all unfortunately overturned by the new government in 2010, which clawed all the money back for that. And as the officers have said, since then it has also been used as a Steiner school for some years.
Forwarded to a Mytel
so
voicemail
again,
system.
this is not an open space, it's a brownfield site. I do note the 33 emails and letters of objection, and clearly residents in the area will have highway concerns and traffic concerns. But I think a lot of that has been addressed in the covering notes there. In fact, there are 19 planning conditions that are being imposed, which I think deal quite comprehensively with their concerns. I do particularly note the 22 tree protection orders and the 8 group orders, and I think that will help with the screening. But I would also, particularly this afternoon or this evening, like to draw members' attention to the last sentence of the site proposal description. And that's in relation to the 12 affordable units, which means that almost 40% of the total of this site is going for affordable housing, including 8 social rent and 4 shared ownership. And I have to say to members, we all know in Exeter we have a terrible shortage of affordable and social housing in the city. And I think at this particular time, there's never been a more important time to promote and secure affordable housing and social housing in the city, because obviously at the moment on a Thursday, we salute our key workers, and we also know that many of the key workers in the city need social and affordable housing. So I think there's never a more important time to work on that. So I would urge members to please...
Your call is being forwarded to a Mytel voicemail system. Extension 4.
Housing. I note as well the DCC highways have approved a continuous footpath through the site, which I think is very encouraging. So hopefully in improving this application, members and officers will ensure that this site is redeveloped under considerate construction guidelines around the working hours and access to and from the site. And I would hope as well that we can work very carefully between the two councils, the City Council, the County Council and the developers, to make sure that all of the materials coming in and out of the site is done in a responsible and clean way. We have done that when the new school was built across the road in Exwick, and we've also done it recently with the new flood defence works, with things like street washing. So again, broadly in favour, and hopefully we can get this site redeveloped in a considerate way that will not cause too many problems in Exwick. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hannaford. Does anybody have any points of clarification they wish to ask Councillor Hannaford? If not, have we been able to get hold of Mr. Adam Priest to speak in support of the application?
We're still having trouble getting him in. It's going to a voicemail message when we dial the number in. So we're just going to keep trying him, and hopefully he can.
Well, the thing is, we do need to carry on with the debate on this application. I mean, it is 10 to 6 now. I assume you've been trying to get him for the last 40 minutes or so.
We have, yes, Chair. So we're just going to try him one more time, and hopefully see if this gets him in.
Yes, I mean, he is speaking on the next application as well.
Your call is being forwarded to a Mitel voicemail system. Extension 4. Please leave a message.
That's it.
It's still going to voicemail, isn't it?
It is, yes.
I don't think we can carry on and hang on anymore for him. We have no other speakers on this one, so it is now open for debate. Who wishes to start this one? Phil, Councillor Bialik, you wish to speak? You've indicated something?
Yes, thank you. Chair, I can understand, and I've looked at the objections and the 30-odd objections, and people have raised issues with me, particularly on the other site, and we'll talk about that next time. I think, concurring with Councillor Hannaford, housing is much needed. We need the housing. There is a predominance of social and affordable housing in Exeter, which I think is right. I understand the concerns of people with regard to traffic. Indeed, we get this in most parts of the cities nowadays, and that's why I was specific, and Lloyd had answered it in detail, and I feel sure that's the same remark that he will use on the next application. I see one of the objections said about reduction in environmental, economic and quality of life for existing residents. I understand change is a very important issue to a lot of people. This was a busy school once upon a time, and I feel sure the comings and goings of the traffic at 2 times of the day would have been far greater than what we're going to experience here, to be brutally honest. It's well served with public transport. It's got a good cycleway down through and walkway down through Pine Avenue, which will lead down onto Exeter Road into other bus services. And I think it's very appropriate for this area. It's like many things, once it is built and the people move in, they will see that we are putting people back into the community. The issues with regard to facilities, well, unfortunately, as Councillor Hannaford said, much of that has been taken away from us, and no longer is that a consideration that we can potentially refuse any application. So I will be supporting the application, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bialik. Does anybody else wish to speak to this application? Please indicate.
Yes, I do.
Who is that?
Councillor Harvey.
Councillor Harvey, yes. Could I ask councillors if they are able to jot a note onto the conversation bit of my screen so I can know who wants to speak, please? But Councillor Harvey, please go ahead.
Okay. If we look at observations on page 28 of the report, we see this is a brownfield site within a build-up area of the city with 22 individual tree protection orders and 8 group tree protection orders. I really don't see what more the City Council can do to ensure that we work towards fulfilling our carbon agenda and towards working on it's a brownfield site. We're not losing any new greenfield site within the city, and we're protecting the trees that are already there on the site. This to me is an example of where the City Council are looking at defending the green issues that we possibly can. I shall be supporting this application. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Harvey.
Yeah, could I speak as well? I'm sorry, the chat, it isn't working on my iPad. It's Councillor Sutton.
Right, so okay, carry on then, Councillor Sutton, please.
Thank you. I too will be supporting this application for the reasons that have already been stated, but I won't repeat those, but I would just like to draw attention to the fact that the applicant has indicated that they intend to continue to manage the site and the open spaces that are there, and I think that's to be welcomed as well, because we're all aware of areas in the city where developers have put in play areas and open spaces and either set up a management committee that disappears after very few years, or sometimes never puts the management committee in place. So I welcome the fact that Live West want to be actively involved, not just in delivering these much needed homes on a brownfield site, but also continuing to maintain standards and the quality of the site for the people who are going to be making it their homes. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sutton. Does anybody else wish to speak on this one? If not, if there are no further points, I would like one of the members to move the recommendation for approval of this application with the amended conditions 2 and 7. Can I have a mover, please?
Happy to move it, Councillor Sutton.
Thank you, Councillor Sutton, and I need somebody to second it, please.
Councillor Bialik.
Seconded by Councillor Bialik. Right, we will now do the voting. Mark, can you do the roll call again, please? And please, members, state if you are voting for, against, or abstaining.
Thank you, Chair. So, Councillor Bialik, please.
For.
Councillor Branston. Councillor Branston? Oh, I'll come back to him. Councillor Foll?
For.
Councillor Gassane?
For.
Thank you. Councillor Harvey?
For.
Thank you. Councillor Mrs Henson?
For.
Thank you. Councillor Mitchell?
For.
Thank you. Is Councillor Branston, are you there?
Yeah, for.
Oh, thank you. Councillor Morse?
For.
Thank you. Councillor Sheldon?
For.
Thank you. Councillor Sparks?
For.
Thank you. Councillor Sutton?
For.
Thank you. Councillor Williams?
For.
Thank you. Councillor Lyons?
Forgotten Councillor Sparks.
Oh no, I've done Councillor Sparks.
Sorry, I missed him. Sorry.
Councillor Sparks confirmed you would.
Yes, I'm for. Thank
you.
Yes, I'm for.
Thank you, Chair. I can confirm that's a unanimous vote in favour of the recommendations, which have been carried as amended.
Right, lovely. Thank you, Mark. So as you say, that one is carried. We now move on to application number 6, which is the former Exeter Middle School. And I think, Paul, you're doing this one as well.
Yes, I am, Chair. Hopefully in front of you, you'll see the location plan. The application site was formerly used by Exwick Middle School. The site is bounded by Higher Exwick Hill to the north, leading on to Gloucester Road. Palmerston Drive is to the east, and Knoll Drive is to the south. The axis is located to the northwest of the site. At the same time as a Foxhays outline application being granted consent in 2019 for residential development, so was this site. However, unlike Foxhays, the details of the vehicular access were not agreed and are therefore subject to assessment within this scheme. This outline application also includes a Section 106 agreement, which requires an affordable housing provision of 35% in line with local plan policy. Again, a summary of all the conditions and 106 requirements from the outline consent are contained within the officer report. The site layout seeks reserved matters for a total of 43 dwellings, including 11 one-bedroom properties, 22 two-bedroomed and 10 three-bedroomed. The scheme also includes 71 car parking spaces, 16 affordable units are proposed, with 11 social rent, and 5 shared ownership, which equates to 37% provision. And I'll show you some photographs from different viewpoints throughout the site. Again, a number of trees which are to be retained essentially, and also a sloping nature of the site, so sort of fairly challenging design issues to contend with. Vehicular access has been subject to significant concerns being raised by local residents, given the presence of nearby Exeter High School and the need for safety for children. Consequently, the applicant's highway consultant and county highway officer have had extensive discussions aimed at creating the most appropriate access arrangement to provide safety for pedestrians and cyclists who use Higher Exeter Hill. These have included the provision of give-way and one-way systems, pedestrian cyclist priority areas, and the need for barriers along Higher Exeter Hill. Subject to suitable conditions, this arrangement is now considered to be acceptable. However, Lloyd will be, as a county highway officer, can respond to any of the questions you may have in respect of this particular aspect of the scheme. The scheme also provides improved access in terms of the pedestrian access through onto Gloucester Road and also onto Palmerston Drive and also onto Exwick Hill, which are to be supported. Again, a range of house types proposed within the development. Like Fox Hayes, they've been designed to respond to the nature of the site. The designs include access to balconies at first floor to compensate for the lack of more traditional garden spaces. Again, this is due to emphasis on the design to create perimeter vegetation and concentrate development within the centre of the site. As with Fox Hayes, Live West will be maintaining this open space. And this shows the relationships between some of the closer properties to these particular sites in the southwest corner and the southeast corner, and it just shows the level of detail that the applicant has gone to try and cover this arrangement. And as I say, there are significant level issues involved in that particular parts of the site. Some computer generated images. This is looking from the access. This is as you come into the access, it's looking down the site. And then there's another one that actually comes from the south of the site, which is that pedestrian access I showed you earlier, coming from Gloucester Road. So that's looking into the site. In summary, as with Fox Hayes, the applications has generated significant local objection, principally to concerns regarding overdevelopment of the site and the knock-on problems associated with this, and the acceptability of the access in terms of highway safety. It is, however, considered that the scheme has been designed to meet individual characteristics of the site and without a detrimental impact on neighbouring properties. The update sheet does show a further objection to the access arrangement has been lodged, and also concern about land ownership issues along the boundary with Gloucester Road. However, these are being dealt with as a land ownership issue directly by Live West. Accordingly, subject to the conditions set out in the officer's report and the update sheet, the officer's recommendation is for approval. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Bialik, you have a question.
Well, thank you. I understand the concerns of the parking, and the question I would like to ask Paul, in view of the latest money available for the County Council and £338,000 and other schemes, could we discuss, because beyond Knoll Drive, which you see down the bottom, and Exwick Road, the only people who use that road should be the people who use it, right up to Liverpool Drive, up the top and everything else. This would be an ideal contender for saying residents only, and it should be for cycling and keep car other than the residents, keep all other cars out. That would surely help the concerns of the residents in and around that area who are concerned that during school times, cars are parked all over the place, obstructing the pathway, in actual fact making it dangerous. This could be an ideal consideration, I'm not saying consideration. Lloyd's on the call. Could that be something that we could actually consider? Thank you, Chair.
Lloyd, would you like to respond?
Yes, Chair. Could I clarify the areas that you would like to see protected?
Beyond Knoll Drive sweeps around and joins Gloucester Road down at the bottom of the picture there, right at the bottom, which is basically 6 o'clock, right down at the bottom by 2018 where it says, or whatever it is. So all the way up there, Gloucester Road, right up to Liverpool Hill, could be just for residents only and a couple of visitors. Obviously for deliveries and all those other things. It could be excluded to general traffic and be turned over to cycle and pedestrian. That may help, mightn't it? What do you think? Is that something that could be considered, although not as part of this application, but in with something else?
Before us, I think we need to look at what is being presented. If Paul scrolls up to the highway access diagram, you will see that there are some double yellow lines on the proposed access there. So that prevents parking on that corner, which you quite often see. But when you get further down towards Knoll Hill, as you've just described, that is, I guess that is something for the school to respond to rather than this applicant itself, because there are enough parking spaces within this site to serve its own right. So to ask for Section 106 money, yes, might be beneficial, but it wouldn't be something that I would be recommending refusal without.
I understand. Thank you, Chair.
Do you wish to come back, Councillor Bialik?
No, thank you. It's just an idea, and Lloyd's put me right. Thank you.
Right, thank you. Does anybody else have any points of clarification? If not, we have Councillor Hannaford speaking again under Standing Order 44. Councillor Hannaford, would you like to speak now, please?
Hello, Chair. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. Again, I'm speaking in favour of supporting this application broadly. This again is another brownfield site that was always going to be developed. And some of the objections on this site as well have been talking about open space. But as those of us who've been in Exeter a long time actually know, you only have to go across the road and up Exeter Lane and you're in the countryside with footpaths and fields, etc. So there is a lot of amenity space around in the area that's very good quality. Footpath 44, I think it is, just across the road. So it was always going to be developed. And I think, in terms of the actual site itself, the retention of most of the trees is extremely welcome, and it's almost like the application has treated the significant trees there with some respect, which I think is important. I think members can see a lot of work's been done from a highways perspective on this application, and you can it's very detailed. I think I particularly welcome the inclusion that every dwelling is having a cycle storage facility, and I think that's a great way forward to encourage people to cycle who come to this site eventually. And clearly from that work, there's been a lot of work going into the proposed single lane traffic flow, the giveaway areas, the pedestrian priority crossings, and the inclusion of barriers along sections of Higher Exwick Hill. And clearly all of that is vital because this is the main walking route to and from Exwick Heights Primary School. And if I may, Chair, just on that issue, the big concern and the big issue in terms of the access to Exwick Heights Primary School is that we were never able, at least until the moment, to get a path coming up from the bottom of Kinnerton Way up to the school site, which means that lots of the parents have to go on a very convoluted route to actually walk up to the school. Exwick Heights is a wonderful school, but it is in a very challenging topographical area to get to, but unfortunately that was the only area that we could put the school on some years ago when we secured the money for it. So I think one of the big answers to the traffic and congestion problem around that school is that path coming up from Kinnerton Way. If I can go back again to the actual application and the reports that are here, that very sensitive relationship, I think, with Exeter Heights Primary School and as the main walking route, I'd like to draw members' attention to the first part of the representation section, and that states that the head and chair of governors at Exeter Heights have confirmed that they no longer have any objections to the proposed highways layout, and that for me is key in terms of the relationship to the school, that they are now hopefully satisfied and content that the work that has been done to make it secure and safe. So I think that's important that does take some of the objections out. I know, again, there are 38 emails of objection and possibly 39. But again, I note the 19 planning conditions that are being imposed, and I think they deal with the pertinent concerns that we've received. And again, 37% of the proposed housing units will be affordable, 11 social rent, and I especially welcome, Chair, the 2 that will be wheelchair accessible, because that's very important that we have an inclusive housing development that, you know, doesn't exclude any of our local people. But again, hopefully improving this application, I'd just like to get an assurance from members and officers that there will be special care given during the construction period in reference to the children and families accessing Exeter Heights Primary School, to make sure that we keep everybody safe in the process. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Hannaford. Does anybody have any points of clarification? Councillor Guzane.
Oh, sorry.
Councillor Guzane, you wish to speak.
I just have a little bit of concern about the antisocial behaviour that might arise because of the under-house parking. Are you satisfied, Councillor Hannaford, with the provisions that by increased lighting for that?
Yes, I am, Councillor Hussain. We had a similar problem in Kinnerton Way some years ago, where there was some cars that did get burnt out, which I think may have fed into the sort of local psyche about that. But I think with good lighting, I think we can deter it. And I think the police section of the responses actually covers that as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anybody else have any points of clarification they wish to ask Councillor Hannaford? If not, we do have members of the public speaking on this application. And firstly, can I ask Kevin Pritchard, who is speaking against the application, to speak, please? Mr. Pritchard, you have 3 minutes to speak on the item, and you will advise when the 3 minutes are up. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for allowing me to speak. I'm not against using the site for housing, but I do have a few concerns. One, the proposed 1.8 metre closed border fence should be erected prior to any building work starting to reduce dust and noise to adjacent properties. I understand the existing fence will not be removed and new one constructed within the site. Next on item 2, the substation construction needs to be synthetically designed, preferably brick clad, and needs to be enclosed in the building with acoustic cladding walls to keep the noise level to a minimum, so it's not a nuisance to the adjacent properties. That's the new ones and the proposed. I'm very pleased with the drawing showing the trees, and that's Foxford Design drawing 1917-01 Rev A, which is showing the trees being retained, but it must be important that doesn't change and they are kept. It's important also for these because it preserves the long view for the properties on the opposite side of the River Exe. And the retained oak trees are an important native species. Item 4 is also important. The trees at the proposed vehicle entrance to the site are not damaged during the road construction. And this is particularly important for the routes, and when they're constructing the new road, that those routes are protected. Also, item 5, the tree protection barrier will need to be erected prior to any construction commencing, so that vehicles and any machinery do not cause damage to the tree protection area. And also, like on item 6, planning condition in place that no construction takes place during Saturdays, Sundays and bank holidays. And the last one, which item 7, which will be a nice one to put in, is when the work's completed, the developer will pay for the adjacent properties to have the windows cleaned for free to remove the construction dust and dirt. Thank you for listening to me, and that's all my items.
Thank you, Mr. Thank you, Mr. Pritchard. Before I ask any members, Paul, would you like to come in about this electricity substation?
Yes, in terms of substations, often they just don't need planning permission in terms of like being built. So sometimes you'll see developments which are fairly well designed, and then like a electricity substation will be plonked in the middle of it. So I think Mr. Pritchard's raised a few things that are sort of slightly outside the planning remit, but it doesn't mean that we can't kind of go back to the applicant and suggest some of these improvements. And I'm not sure about the last one in terms of paying for window cleaning, but certainly in the other ones, they're fairly straightforward in terms of like the how we would address these things.
And I think the substation is quite important because it is going to be a visual as you drive in. It's going to be pretty visual to the site, so you're going to see it on the right-hand side. And I've seen quite a few substations which are enclosed, and sometimes they're GRP substations, but they're enclosed in material that looks like brickwork. So there's nothing new I'm asking for. I've seen quite a few of these type of constructions around.
If members were happy with that, I'm sure we could put a condition on that addresses that and makes it a brick-clad cover, which would address Mr. Pritchard's concerns there. So if members were happy with it and they agreed with an additional condition, I don't think that's a problem.
Councillor Harvey, do you wish to speak and ask Mr. Pritchard any questions?
No, I don't want to ask you any questions.
Right.
I want to speak when we get to the discussion stage, please.
Right. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Pritchard. Do we have Mr. Adam Priest, who's speaking in support of this application? Have we managed to get him yet?
Yes, you have.
Mr. Priest, can you hear me?
I can, yes.
I'm sorry, we had to deal with the other application you were coming to speak on because we were unable to get you to answer the phone. I'm sorry about that, but you were speaking in support of that application, and in actual fact the application was passed. But you now have 3 minutes to speak in support of this application when you're ready, please.
Okay, thank you, Chair. My name's Adam Priest. I'm the officer at Live West responsible for this application and for the one at Fox Hayes. As Paul Jeffrey has described, the scheme follows the principles of the application at Fox Hayes. I won't repeat those, but just to highlight a couple of areas where we've tried to take it further. The site, as you've noted, benefits from an abundance of mature trees. Many of these trees are in good health, and the majority are around the perimeter of the site. Whilst on the one hand these do constrain the site, they also provide a degree of screening for nearby homes and, more importantly, a high quality and diverse natural environment. Our proposals aim to create a compact community nestled amongst these trees. The second areas I'd like to highlight are the south-facing slopes at the northern and southern ends of the site. The area to the south, which slopes down to an ephemeral stream, has been designed as a habitat for reptiles and will include brash piles for them to make their homes amongst grassland and newly planted trees. To the north, the area running alongside Higher Exwick Hill will be managed as an oak and field maple woodland. The great challenge at the site is, of course, access, which can only realistically be achieved via Higher Exwick Hill. The junction with Gloucester Road is hugely problematic and is used as both a car park and a turning head for the school run. At the same time, Higher Exwick Hill is an important pedestrian and cycle route to the school. The situation as it stands is close to unmanageable, and we have, of course, no desire to worsen it. We've discussed our proposals with the school and with city and county officers to develop a strategy that puts safety first based on 3 key elements. Firstly, reducing parking at the junction and giving pedestrians priority. Secondly, reducing to an absolute minimum the risk of vehicles colliding with pedestrians and cyclists using Higher Exwick Hill. And thirdly, reducing local traffic by improving pedestrian and cycle links through our site. We obviously don't have time for me to describe every element in detail, but to summarise, we will introduce double yellow lines to the southern side of Higher Exwick Hill to clarify that parking there is not only dangerous and inconsiderate, but prohibited. We will construct a raised table at this junction to ensure pedestrians have priority and to make parking and turning less convenient. Where Higher Exwick Hill meets our access, we'll create a raised table giving pedestrians clear priority. This will be a contrasting colour to ensure visibility. The bollards on Higher Exwick Hill will be replaced with staggered barriers to slow cyclists down and define where children should wait before crossing the road. And at the same time, vehicles leaving our site will be required to give way having been forced to slow by passing through a 3-metre width restriction. We've given a lot of thought to highway safety and to our proposals as a whole. We genuinely believe that this is a high quality scheme and hope that you agree. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Priest. Are you happy to take any questions of clarification?
Absolutely.
Do any members have any questions to Mr. Priest, please? No? Thank you very much. So the item is now open to debate by members. Who wished to? Councillor Harvey, you wish to speak on this one, don't you?
I do indeed. Thank you. Thank you, Chair. My comments are mostly the same as on the previous application. I'm pleased to see the fact that it's a brownfield site. I'm pleased to see the fact that attention is being paid to looking after the trees on the site. I'm pleased to see that we've got an appreciative element of affordable housing, but further than that, I'm also very pleased to see that the Waste Department have been consulted and have made some comments, including those that their vehicles at 26 tonnes may be cause may cause some issues surrounding some of the paving, so I'm wondering if possibly we could look a little bit further into that. But in general, I'm very supportive of the application. I think given the constraints that we have and the need for new housing in Exeter, building on brownfield land and looking after our natural tree habitat and environment is a very sound policy to adopt. So I shall be supporting this application. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Harvey. Councillor Sheldon. Councillor Sheldon, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Sorry, I was just crossing things off my list as Councillor Harvey spoke. The one thing, I'm relieved that we have extensive work on the highways issue because that is important. But the one thing I did want to point out, because I'm the first to point it out when it goes the wrong way, is that the two applications that this developer's presented are for 31 and 43 houses, 74 altogether. 35% affordable for that, 25.9 houses, rounded up to 26. However, the two sites are actually providing 28, and it makes a pleasant change for a developer to actually provide more affordable housing than they're legally required to provide, and it is to be commended.
Thank you, Councillor Sheldon. Councillor Bialik.
Thank you, Chair. I think much of what Councillor Hannaford sums up the position here, and if we just recall these two sites, former school sites, owned by Devin County Council, who were determined to sell it to the person who would who would pay most back along, and compared that with some other possible uses and housing developments that might have come up here, I think this is one of the better options that we've looked at. As I said earlier, traffic's always going to be a problem in all parts of Exeter. I think highways have done a lot of work on it. I think the tree situation, I think it will be a good development, and I shall, of course, be supporting the development.
Thank you, Councillor Bialik. Does anybody
Yes, please, Chair.
That is Councillor Fold.
Yes, please. I'm afraid my button's not working either, but if I could come in.
Yes, please.
Yeah, it's not my ward, but it is my patch. I live here in Exwick, and word is out that I'm a councillor, and several members of the public have been in touch with me, and the editors of the Exwick News, which is delivered to all doors, and there were a lot of concerns. I'm pleased that as a result of discussions during and following the recent planning delegation meeting, the number of conditions, I believe, has risen to 19. And I think that sort of spade work that's been done makes me feel much more comfortable in supporting this now.
Thank you, Councillor Fold. Does anybody else wish to speak on this one? If not, can I ask Paul? Can I ask members, in actual fact, Mr. Oh golly, I've lost it now. I've got so many pieces of paper in front of me. Mr. Pritchard asked about the electricity substation being brick clad. How do members feel about this? Something we
Chair, Councillor Bialik, as Paul Jeffrey, the officer, said that they are prepared to take these points on board as a condition, and I would happily move them as an amendment. And perhaps, although not a condition, I believe the developer has listened to the situation with regard to cleaning their windows. And as silly that some people may feel about that, you'd be surprised at the number of complaints we do get at developments where there is dust and grime and all sorts being deposited. It's not such a silly idea, and it would be a very great concession, as silly as it may sound to some people, that the developers would do. But I would certainly move those other issues as an amendment to the conditions. Thank you, Chair.
And have I got somebody who will second it?
I will second that quite happily, Councillor Mitchell.
Lovely, thank you, Councillor Mitchell.
Chair, could I just have my question answered, please? It's Councillor Hannaford.
The question you asked, Councillor Hannaford?
Is he a member of the committee?
You're not a member of the committee, Councillor Hannaford, and I'm afraid you've had your 5 minutes worth.
Okay, they didn't answer my question, though.
I'm sorry, I think you'll need to talk to the officer out of this meeting now, because I can't allow you to come back in.
All right. It's just about how they're going to work when the children are coming and going from the school when they're building.
Right. I think you need to talk to the officers privately, please. Right. If there are no further points from members, can I ask a member who will move the recommendation to approve this one?
Councillor Bialik.
And a seconder?
I will second that.
Thank you. That's Councillor Branston. So with the amended condition 2, which is on the update sheet, can I ask Mark to do the vote for this one, please? Remember stating if you're voting for, against or abstaining.
Thank you, Chair. So can I start with Councillor Bialik, please?
For.
Councillor Branston?
For.
Thank you. Councillor Fole?
For.
Councillor Gassane?
For.
Thank you. Councillor Harvey?
For.
Thank you. Councillor Mrs Henson?
For.
Thank you. Councillor Mitchell?
For.
Thank you. Councillor Morse?
For.
Thank you. Councillor Sheldon?
For.
Thank you. Councillor Sparks?
For.
Thank you. Councillor Sutton?
I'm going to abstain because I missed a chunk of the discussion, but that's the only reason. The technology chucked me out of the meeting.
Thank you, Councillor Sutton. Councillor Williams?
For.
Councillor Lyons?
I shall abstain as the chair.
Good. I can confirm that that's 11 votes in favour with 2 abstentions. The recommendations have been carried with as amended.
Lovely. Thank you very much, Mark. Right, members, we now move on now to item 7 on the agenda, which is the existing car park D at the University of Exeter, east of Amory Buildings, Exeter. And I think Paul will be presenting this one. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you, Chair. As you'll see from the location plan with the red dotted line, the application seeks the construction of a new academic building within the Streatham University campus. The site is located to the west of East Park, currently under construction for student accommodation, and south of the Innovation Centre, located on North Park Road, and north of the Business School and Wrens Drive. The aerial view shows the extent of the site in red, which occupies the whole of the existing car park D. To the bottom of the photograph, you will see the car park adjacent to the artificial pitch, which has been extended essentially to compensate for the loss of the car park D. A few photographs showing principally from Wrens Drive looking towards the car park, the existing car park. The site plan shows a footprint of this substantial new academic building occupying a total floor area of 13,900 square metres. As the report sets out, the building is to be used to accommodate a 400-seat auditorium, as well as seminar rooms, computer teaching rooms, study areas and student cafeteria. The zigzag pattern alongside the building indicates a stepped area of outside seating area which leads down to the main entrance. This is a landscape plan which shows the building occupying a sizable area of the site, and as a result the trees along the eastern side unfortunately have to be removed. The landscaping plan does indicate that there will be a number of trees planted to the north of the site to compensate, although the area for large areas of landscaping within this site is limited. Although not indicated within the report, a landscaping condition and replacement landscaping will be added to the planning conditions if this application is approved. This is a sectional drawing just to provide a visual indication of the sloping nature of the site and the corresponding changes in story heights within the building. The top sectional drawing shows the 4-storey element alongside North Park Road, and this rises to 6 stories alongside Wrens Drive to the south. The bottom section shows the eastern elevation looking towards the existing arboretum. These are some elevation treatments for the proposed building. This is the west elevation. This is from the stepped area of seating area. This is south from Wrens Drive. This is east looking towards the arboretum, and this is the view looking from North Park Road. There's just some images of the main atrium, highlighting the openness of the space and the linkage between the walkways and the teaching area. Flexibility is sort of been key to the design of this building. And then just some computer generated images of what the building will look like. Again, this is from that zigzag pattern I was talking about earlier. And this is from Wrens Drive. As you, to the right of this picture is the entrance into the East Park development. While this is a substantial building at 6 stories, it is something that has been carefully designed to take account of the changing levels, given the sloping nature of the site. The building has been designed to ensure that the internal space can be used flexibly, and the openness in the interior is reflected in the images presented. Supporting information in the form of landscape visual assessments from different viewpoints show the building will be successfully integrated into the campus. The building will also achieve BREEAM Excellent. As the report sets out, the proposed to construct a new academic building within the university campus is wholly in accordance with the development plan policies and has been anticipated in the university's own master plan. The Highway Officer has recommended that the scheme is acceptable, subject to a financial contribution towards addressing the impact of the scheme from potential parking on surrounding residential roads which may occur. In addition, a travel plan is required to promote sustainable transport. There is a typo in condition 11, and rather than reading 28 decibels at 7 till 11, it should read 38 decibels. The update sheet also highlights the need for a lighting and timing during construction. Just to update again, the County Flood Officer has raised no objection subject to a suitable drainage condition. And as I mentioned earlier, a landscaping condition and the need for replacement landscaping, if that fails, should be included in the planning conditions. Subject to these changes to the condition and subject to the completion of a legal agreement to secure highway contributions, the officer recommendation is for approval. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Paul. Do any members have any points of clarification? Nobody has indicated that they have. Thank you. We have no members speaking under Standing Order 44, but we do have a member of the public speaking on the application. Can I ask Mr. Hugh McCann, who is speaking in support of the application, to speak, please? And you have 3 minutes to speak on the item, and you will be advised when the 3 minutes are up. And you may be muted. I'm not sure which the member staff are doing at the moment. So if you'd like to speak now, Mr. McCann, please.
Good evening. We have worked extensively with the City Planning team and are pleased the application has come before the committee tonight with a recommendation for approval and with no objections. This project will accommodate 627 academic colleagues and 6 research institutes. This facilitates a concentration of research across the core research themes, which are also key components of the government industrial strategy. The project can also help drive the local economy in the post-COVID recovery phase by supporting the LEP's local industrial strategy, with environmental big data identified as a key sector for the Exeter economy going forward. The university is currently working with the City Council and the LEP to develop Exeter's industrial strategy, ensuring alignment with the research scheduled to be carried out in the building, which includes the causes and impact of climate change, computer science and big data analysis, artificial intelligence, water management and conservation. This last one has a joint £32 million grant from the government and South West Water already in place, and this will help drive one of the key sectors in the local economy. Alongside the research institutes are new state-of-the-art education facilities to help deliver our research-led education. In looking forward, you may have recently heard our Vice-Chancellor describe the challenges the HE sector is now faced with, and a particular reference to international student recruitment. It is difficult to predict our 2021 recruitment intake at this stage, as UCAS have moved the decision date for students from the 15th of May to the 18th of June to confirm their firm choices. It is likely we will see a dip in international student numbers this year, and we are seeking to mitigate this to a degree by the government allowing 105% of our predicted growth for 2021 from home and EU students. The government has also stated that nursing and allied health places are excluded from the 105% cap and will allocate 5,000 more places in these areas. Our College of Medicine and Health is well placed to benefit from this. Looking forward, it should also be noted that a Higher Education Policy Institute report from 2018 details an increase in England's student demographic, leading to additional demand of 300,000 HE places through to 2030. In terms of our research activity, the university's research activity this year will be about £97 million. This is projected to expand to 120 to 125 million over the next 5 years. A ministerial task force is discussing potential government interventions in the HE sector at this moment, and this could also be positive for the UK research base. Continued investment by the university has seen recent successful projects for research and education, including the new neuroimaging centre at Wanford, the vibration simulation engineering building on the Science Park, and the South West Institute of Technology with a focus on computer science, big data and artificial intelligence with our FE partners. This project will be required to ensure the University of Exeter is able to continue to be a forever destination institution, and it is important for us to have the project approved as a shovel-ready project in order we are able to respond to changing circumstances as they develop, and to ensure we are in a position to realise our core strategy of being a top 10 UK and a top 100 global research intensive university. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McCann. Are you happy to take any questions?
Yes, of course, thank you.
Has anybody got any questions to Mr. McCann?
Councillor Williams, I would like to ask one question.
Yes, carry on then, Councillor Williams.
Yes, it's obviously very interesting and wonderful application this, but I was a bit worried when you said about the 400 auditorium, and just wondered if you want to comment on that in sort of the post-COVID situation.
Yes, that's a very good point. And we are looking forward to our opening in September this year, of course, and we are having to take on board the current guidance around social distancing in particular, which, as you will have obviously seen, is a big challenge for schools opening this week, but also will be a challenge for ourselves. We are making plans for that at the moment. It will mean in this initial period, if the social distancing is still in place come September, and depending for how long for, the capacity in our teaching rooms will be reduced, but obviously we would expect this to build in the future and back up to what we might describe as normal. And the 400-seat lecture theatre in this particular scheme is capable of being divided into two 200-seat lecture theatres, and it's also capable of having all the seats taken back and creating one large open space floor as well. So again, coming back to Paul's point about flexibility within the building, we have sought to make it as flexible as possible.
Thank you, Mr. McCann. Has anybody else got any points of clarification and questions? Thank you very much, Mr. McCann. This is now open for debate, and I have Councillor Mitchell who wishes to speak first. Councillor Mitchell.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's encouraging to see this application for additional teaching and research facilities on the university campus. And as already mentioned, hopefully some of the research undertaken will assist in the development of the local and the wider South West economy. The issues I wish to discuss are more bread and butter issues, particularly in relation to the building programme prior to the building opening. In regard to this specific site, I think we also need to bear in mind how dominant this building will be in relation to its neighbouring built environment. Most of it'll be 2 to 3 stories above the level of existing buildings, which are actually built generally into the landscape, whereas, as already been pointed out, this is on a rising slope. That doesn't mean we are opposed to it, but I just like to point out this is going to be a dominant building on the campus. Issues raised by myself and fellow ward councillors brought to us by the members of the public in relation to existing development that's taking place on the university campus, we'd like to see mitigated in the conditions relating to this particular development, which we're fully in favour of. I'm pleased to see that many of the issues that have arisen with the East Park development are taken into consideration in the conditions, but I think they do need to be publicly aired so the public and local residents are aware that as councillors and as a council we're aware of some of the issues that do arise with large-scale developments. Traffic management has already been raised, and I'm particularly pleased that this has been highlighted by Devin County Council in their report. Restricting car parking spaces, as we're seeing with a growing university, doesn't in itself solve traffic problems. As far as most locals are concerned, it usually transposes the issue into the local community. And I note that in the report, the university own traffic management plan is due for renewal in 2020. And one of the conditions regarding the approval for this building is that an updated plan be submitted prior to the opening of the building. And I would hope that the university, at the time of construction of its plan, would also take into the needs of the wider community rather than just its own campus. Because what they do on campus or don't do on campus can have an effect in the immediate environment of the ward that I and my colleagues represent. And I would hope that when they're drawing up this plan for their traffic management, that they would work with Exeter City Council, Devon County Council and the local community prior to submitting their plan. And I would be interested, for example, if the university in the present climate were considering, for example, becoming a car-free university, so that students who came to Exeter were aware that for the duration of their studies that they're not permitted to bring a car to the city of Exeter. If such a scheme was introduced, not only would that make a major contribution to our climate change targets, issues with residential parkings in the city, but if it was actually linked to a positive pro-electric car scheme for students, it would bolster the use of electric vehicles in Exeter and its infrastructure. There are also issues in regard to noise levels that we've had in the construction at the moment, and some residents are suffering 24-hour noise from generators from the existing East Park scheme, and I would hope the university could give us some assurance that in this new project we would not be suffering 24/7 noise emitting from this new site. Also, the issue has been addressed of floodlighting, which was an issue in regard to the existing site, and hopefully that will be kept within limited hours so that people don't feel they're living either near a football stadium or a Second World War film. Local residents want to be good neighbours of the university, and if issues arise, they want to be listened to and their problems resolved. And I hope that is the spirit in which the university wished to proceed with this application. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Mitchell. Does anyone else wish to speak on this item? Nobody else wishes to speak? If there are nobody else wishes to speak on this one, can I ask a member to move the recommendation, which is to approve this with the amended condition 4 on this one?
I'm happy to move that, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Mitchell. Can I have a seconder?
I'll second it, Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Thank you. Mark, can you do the voting for this one, please? Remember, members, you are saying you are voting for, against or abstaining.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Bialik, please.
Councillor Bialik, please.
4.
Thank you. Councillor Branston? Councillor Branston?
4.
Thank you. Councillor Fole?
4.
Thank you. Councillor Gassane?
4.
Thank you. Councillor Harvey?
4.
Thank you. Councillor Mrs Henson?
4.
Thank you. Councillor Mitchell?
4.
Thank you. Councillor Morse?
4.
Thank you. Councillor Sheldon?
4.
Thank you. Councillor Sparks?
4.
Thank you. Councillor Sutton?
4.
Thank you. Councillor Williams?
4.
Thank you. Councillor Lyons.
I shall abstain.
Abstention. That's 12 votes in favour with 1 abstention. The recommendations as carried as amended.
Lovely. Thank you very much, Mark. We now move on to item 8, land at the end, rear of 26 Harrington Lane, Exeter. I believe some members need to declare an interest on this one. Am I right?
Yes, Chair. Councillor Morse, I'd like to declare a personal interest.
Thank you, Councillor Morse. Anybody else?
Yes, Councillor Harvey, I'd like to declare a personal interest.
Thank you. And anybody else?
Yes, Councillor Williams, I'd like to declare a personal interest.
Thank you, members. So will all 3 of you mute your mics and go and make yourselves a cup of tea? We will call you back in when we have finished. Can you confirm, Mark, that they are muted? Mark,
Apologies, Chair, I was on mute. Yes, all 3 have left the meeting room.
Right, lovely. Thank you very much. I think, Roger, you are doing this application, aren't you? Have we got Roger Cotworthy?
Hello, sorry. Thank you, Chair. Can you hear me?
Yes, Roger.
Can you see the slide which says land to rear of 26 Harrington Lane?
Yes.
On your screens?
Yes.
Great. Thank you. This is an outline application for 3 dwellings. The location plan on your screen now shows the application site in the centre. It sits between Bourne Rise and Haring Court Road.
Can you use your cursor to show us exactly where you are, please?
Yes, it's this red-lined area right in the centre of the screen. Can you see that?
Thank you. Yeah, the red area isn't very easy to see on my screen, so...
Apologies. The next slide may be clearer. It's an aerial photo of the same thing. So again, the red line outlines the site, which is right in the centre of the screen. There's currently, as you can see, trees on the site and a polytunnel and a shed, and the site forms an extended part of the garden of 32 Haring Court Road. The proposal seeks full approval of access and layout with scale, appearance and landscaping reserved for future consideration. The access is proposed to be from Bourne Rise at the end of the cul-de-sac at the far end of the photo where you can see the fence. The next photos show the same thing, the fence where the access would be in relation to houses in Bourne Rise. This is the one to the left at the end of the cul-de-sac, and this photograph is the one to the right at the end of the cul-de-sac. And the picture on the screen now should show you the proposed site layout, showing 1 4-bedroom dwelling detached and 2 3-bedroom semi-detached dwellings, all with parking and rear gardens. There have been 8 objections as set out in the report. They cover overdevelopment of the site, overdevelopment of the wider pinhole area, an increase in vehicle movements and associated pollution, insufficient parking, loss of trees, loss of wildlife habitat, and impact of a proposed foul sewage treatment plant on local amenity. The Devon County Council Highways Officer raises no objection, subject to a financial contribution towards suitable infrastructure. He also confirms that the level of parking is appropriate. The Environment Agency has advised that their own regulations, together with building control requirements, will address any concerns about amenity impacts arising from the proposed sewage treatment plant. The majority of trees on the site will be retained, and those that are lost are of limited value. Biodiversity enhancements are proposed to be sought via a condition. In conclusion, the 3 houses can be accommodated without significant impact on amenity, and approval is recommended subject to conditions and a Section 106 agreement as set out in the report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Roger. Do any members have any points of clarification, please?
Yes, Chair, Councillor Bialik.
Yes, Councillor Bialik.
In the report, page 70, it says the highways officer had noted that although additional traffic was a fundamental concern, these impacts could be mitigated through the Pinho area access strategy. Can you explain how the Pinho area access strategy will mitigate those fundamental concerns, please?
Chair, with your permission, can we bring Lloyd in to comment on that?
Yes, certainly. If Lloyd is still around.
Yes, I am, Chair. To answer Councillor Bayat's question, I guess that I'm being consistent about what we've asked around all new developments in Pinho. Members not too recently approved an application up on Pulling Road, which is immediately to the northwest of this development. And within the Pinho area access strategy, Devon County Council have set out a number of measures in order to mitigate the developments in Pinho. It formed part of the evidence base for the Exeter core strategy and East Devon local plan, and has in fact been through an planning inspectorate at a site in East Devon. The site is in a greenfield site, and therefore the contributions are set out pro rata to what I've previously asked for the two previous applications, notably Home Farm and Pulling Road.
Thank you, Lloyd. Councillor Guzain, have you got a point of clarification?
Yes. Again, it's about access from Bourne-Rise into the area where for example, for rubbish vehicles and things like that. I looked from the pictures. It shows that you have a brick road basically. So how would that get access? So would it be the same, or will the nature of the road, Bourne-Rise, will change to allow for collecting rubbish and all of that, big vehicles to be able to get there and turn and go?
Again, perhaps Lloyd would be able to comment on that.
Yep. So for refuse collections, it'd be no different to the adjacent properties that are already on Bourne-Rise that are adjacent to this development.
Thank you. Councillor Mitchell, have you got a question? Obvious. Right, so if there are no other questions, then I have no member speaking under standing orders, but I have Mrs. Marianne Randall, who is speaking in support of the application. If you would like to speak, please, you have the 3 minutes on the item, and you will be advised when the 3 minutes are up. I hope you can hear me, Mrs. Randall.
Oh, yes. Good evening, Mrs. Lyons. Yes, I can certainly hear you. Thank you. This parcel of land was historically part of our grandparents' orchard that was half developed in the mid-1970s by Sydney Pratt Builders Limited. At this time, there was an outline planning for the whole orchard, including the plot now under consideration. My brother built his house off Harrington Lane on the southeast corner of the orchard beside the existing Apple store in the mid-1980s. And subsequently, following the death of our grandmother, Wimpey's developed the second part of the orchard in the late 1990s. But our parents kept the plot at the bottom of their garden and the top of my brother's garden, with the intention to develop it when the family, when they were no longer living at 32 Haring Court Road. Our parents have now both passed away, and the family wished to secure planning consent for the plot, as was always intended. Access to the land was provided for by Wimpey's in their development plan, and they have confirmed this in recent communications. The land was maintained as a garden until recent years, when the health of our parents deteriorated, and it has now become overgrown and very neglected. It was last cleared in 2018, but nettles, brambles and other scrub had quickly grown back. A tree survey has noted that there are 2 trees out of a total of 9 which will have to be removed as they are within the footprint of the proposed houses, with others that could be kept at the developer's / property owner's discretion. None are of significant value. In fact, 1 is not fit to retain and needs removing, and several of the others are rather ancient apple trees that are not in good health. An ecology survey has found that there are no protected species on the site. There's just a habitat for nesting birds, and there's biodiversity which will remain in the hedgerow. No significant plants have been found. Indeed, some non-native invasive species that need to be controlled have been found. The site is described as scrubland, the former garden having become overgrown and the timber sheds falling apart. The proposed sewage treatment plant can be dealt with under a condition. It will not cause a nuisance to neighbours and will be an efficient way to process waste water. Details can be provided when reserved matters are dealt with. Parking has been provided for each dwelling in accordance with Exeter City Council's guidelines. Secure cycle parking and bin storage will be provided for each dwelling, and Devon County Council Highways comments have been noted, including their requirement for a Section 106 contribution. All the concerns raised by the objectors have been carefully considered and taken into account in this application. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Randall. Are you happy to take any questions?
Yes, certainly.
Do members have any questions to Mrs. Randall? No. Well, thank you very much, Mrs. Randall, for attending the meeting. The application is now open to debate by members. So who wishes to speak on this one? Does nobody wish to speak on this one? We're all extremely quiet. Councillor Henson, you wish to speak?
No, I was just laughing. I know I don't think this is a parcel of land that really could be developed, and I don't see why not. And to be perfectly honest, if it's had class planning, then let's put it into use.
Thank you, Ms. Councillor Henson. If nobody else wishes to speak on this one, can I ask for somebody to move the recommendation, please?
I'll move it, Chair. Councillor Sutton.
Thank you, Councillor Sutton. And
I'll
thank you. Thank you, Councillor Henson. Mark, can you do the voting, please?
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Bialik, please.
4.
Councillor Branston.
4.
Thank you. Councillor Fole.
4.
Councillor Gassane.
4.
Councillor Mrs. Henson.
Yes. 4.
Thank you. Councillor Mitchell. Councillor Mitchell. Oh, I'll come back around to that one. Oh, thank you.
Thank
you. Councillor Sheldon.
4.
Councillor Sparks.
Abstain. Sorry, I was kicked out of the meeting by a Skype problem.
Oh, thank you. Councillor Sutton.
4.
Thank you. Councillor Lyons.
Yes, 4.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. That's 9. So that's 9 votes in favour with 1 abstention. So the recommendations have been carried, Chair.
Right, lovely. Thank you very much, Mark. So that one is carried. Can I now ask the 3 members that were muted, can you get them back into the meeting, please?
Yes, I'll just go through and unmute them now to let them know.
Yeah. I'm early for once. I'm just finishing a planning meeting.
Councillor Fold, can you please mute your mic?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, I just muted him there. So Councillor Morse.
I'm back.
Oh, brilliant! Thank you very much. So it's Councillor Harvey, you back? Well, Councillor Foles just said he's just left the meeting, so I'll just see if we can try and bring him back in. Councillor Harvey and Councillor Williams, have you returned to the room?
I'm back, Councillor Williams.
Thank you. Councillor Harvey? So it looks like Councillor Harvey hasn't returned to the room just yet, Chair.
Right, okay.
I have.
Oh, he's back, sorry.
Oh, yes, I have. Oh, no, he hasn't.
Thank you.
Right, thank you, Councillor Harvey. And Councillor Foles, is he back in now?
Doesn't look like he's back just yet. So I'll see if I can try and dial him in.
Chair, can I ask a question? Are we quorate?
Yes. So we'll carry on. Yes, we are only one member short, so there are 12 of us. So please, Roger, can you present item number 9, which is 89 Mount Pleasant Road?
Yes, thank you, Chair. This application relates to a house at 89 Mount Pleasant Road, and planning permission is sought for a change of use from a C3 dwelling to a C4 house in multiple occupation. The site location plan shows a mid-terrace dwelling right in the centre of your screen in Mount Pleasant Road. This house is in the Article 4 area, where changes of use from dwellings to houses in multiple occupation have been restricted. The property was a house in multiple occupation until 2013, when it was converted to a Class C3 dwelling. The applicant has concluded that the dwelling is not suitable for normal family life and wishes to move. He considers it unlikely that an owner-occupier will purchase the property and therefore seeks planning permission to change the use back to a C4 HMO. And we have a photograph of the house in context. This plan shows the HMOs and properties subdivided into flats in the immediate vicinity. The red ones are the HMOs and the blue ones are subdivided properties, i.e. flats and bedsits. And it demonstrates that there is already a high percentage of houses in multiple occupation and subdivided dwellings in the vicinity. The final two slides show the proposed floor plan to accommodate 5 bedrooms in the property. 2 objections to an increase in HMOs have been received, and 1 letter of support has been received as detailed in the report. The Council's adopted supplementary planning document on houses in multiple occupation explains that there is a general presumption against granting permission for further C4 uses in the restricted zone. However, it explains that there may be some cases where very localised communities are already so imbalanced that the policy objective of protecting a balance is unlikely to be achieved. In these cases, owners of C3 dwellings may find difficulty in finding a purchaser for continued C3 use and may therefore wish to change to Class C4 HMO use. The document sets out 4 criteria that the Council will use to assess any justification for allowing such a change. In this instance, as set out in the report, 3 of the 4 exceptional circumstances have been met. The immediate vicinity already has an overconcentration of HMOs and subdivided properties that have altered the character of the area and resulted in the loss of a balanced community. Consequently, it's difficult for the Council to achieve its policy objectives here, and therefore it is recommended that planning permission is granted. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Roger. I believe Councillor Bialik, you have a question.
Thank you, Chair. I see from the report on page 79 that there's been some 7 months that the house has been on the market. We've had similar discussions before we've allowed them to go. We've had, I believe, a quite detailed sort of examination of this. I need to be satisfied that every attempt has been made, and that is indeed the general consensus, that this house will not sell in this area for residential. I'm still not convinced of that, but Roger, please try and convince me, if you can, please.
Do you wish to come back, Roger?
Yes. Well, we, as you will know from the report and the update sheet, the price has been reduced in an attempt to encourage a sale. This is something which that the whole idea of doing this is the applicant has been in discussion with the council for some considerable time, and I think it's fair to say that given the four criteria that are set out in the council's supplementary planning document, as officers we are satisfied that the particular situation meets that. And I think that is fairly clearly set out in the report. So it's our professional view that the applicant's request is reasonable, that this should be approved, and that we would struggle on appeal given the very clear four criteria that are in our supplementary planning document, which an inspector would have to have regard to.
Thank you, Roger. I believe Councillor Williams, you have a question.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just for clarification, this came to the delegation briefing meeting of the 28th of the 4th, and it's not stated in the report. And we did discuss at that meeting, in fact, I expressed surprise that even though the house had been up for sale for 7 months, there had been no reduction in price at that stage, something I believe that any normal person would have done. And I believe I'm right in saying, but perhaps Roger could confirm this, that it was only after that delegation briefing on the 28th of the 4th that it was put to the owner that they should consider reducing the price. And that happened 3 days later on the 1st of the 5th. And I think it should also be noted that it hasn't been possible to undertake viewings during the lockdown period, and that was only relaxed on the 13th of May.
Councillor Henson.
Yes, Councillor Henson.
I'd ask clarification. Hang on. I'd ask for Roger to clarify and confirm that it came to delegation meeting on 28th of the 4th, because that's not written in the report, and other reports we've had has indicated when we've had something come to delegation briefing. And at delegation briefing, it was noted that the price had not been reduced at that stage and that they were going to go back to the owners to discuss that.
Yes, if in response to that, I'm hoping I might be able to bring in Lee Powell, who's had the discussions directly with the applicant about this. If Lee's there, whether he's able to comment factually on the dates and times of discussions that we've had and when the price was reduced. Are you there, Lee?
Sorry, yes, I am here.
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah.
Hello.
Yes, you're right. Apologies, I've missed that off on the committee report, but what Councillor Williams says is correct. The price was reduced after the delegation briefing meeting.
Thank you, Lee.
So that means it's been reduced for about a month. Thank you.
That's right.
Councillor Henson.
Well, I'm listening to both councillors that have spoken. We took years to get this into position, and I'm feeling that we ought to be very cautious about this. We took years to get the fact of an area to be looked at for precise families, and I think Councillor Williams' point is valid. You know, there hasn't been times, there's no comment on what condition the house is in. I think, you know, I would give it another 3 months. I am tempted to not agree to this because of the situation we're in. Houses, are in that area are required for multiple occupation, and of course they're going to get higher prices than family. But I think the fact that Exeter has tried, and I myself have tried for over many years to get the area sort of to be watched over, that there was too many multiple occupation there, I think it would give it a little longer here.
Thank you, Councillor Henson. I have no members speaking.
Madam Chair, Councillor Mitchell, could I comment?
Yes, of course you can, Councillor Mitchell. Sorry, I didn't see you and you hadn't indicated on my sheet.
No, thank you. Could I just say I totally agree with all the comments made so far?
This is for questions. We're not debating it yet.
Oh, you're not debating it yet?
No.
All right. Thank you. Sorry.
Chair, could I speak?
If you have a point of clarification, Councillor Branston, yes.
Yes, I do, please. I would like Roger just to clarify something he said earlier that I understood. I thought he stated that 3 out of the 4 conditions had been made or been met. But if that isn't so, which is the one condition that has not been agreed?
Yes, I'm happy to clarify that. It's set out in the report. Number 4 is any other circumstances indicating the policy restriction is causing severe personal hardship. And in this instance, the applicant has not provided any information in his submission that this is causing severe personal hardship. So it's not a requirement that you meet all 4 criteria. Any one of them would be possibly sufficient to justify an approval. In this instance, there are 3, but not the 4th one.
Thank you, Roger.
Thank you, Councillor Branston. I now have Mrs. Catherine Partridge, who wants to speak in support of this application. I hope you're there, Mrs. Partridge. You have 3 minutes to speak on this item, and you will be advised when the 3 minutes are up. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to just explain the background of our application. We bought the house the year after we got married 6 years ago. It had been a student let for over 10 years and not in great condition, so we have done a lot of renovation work. The houses on both sides are HMOs. One side is a student property and the other side is a Salvation Army halfway house. When we bought the house, we were first-time buyers, and so I think we're a bit naive about neighbours and about the impact that this would have. There's always been noise and other issues, but when we had children, it started affecting our lives a lot more. Issues include shouting, swearing, drug use, loud music at all times of day and night, and we've even had a drunk neighbour in our garden once. The managers of the halfway house are always helpful when we report problems, but because the residents change every few months, it's not something that can ever be resolved. The house has been on the market for 9 months, and we've had a lot of interest and viewings throughout, but no offers. Feedback has included no HMO planning, parking, but mainly the concern about the 2 adjoining HMOs. We have spoken several times to our estate agent about reducing the price, but he always advised that it wasn't an issue because of the continuous high level of interest. We had almost 40 inquiries for viewings, and prices never raised as an issue on the feedback. And also several other 3 beds in the local area have sold for very similar prices during this time. But we have now reduced the price as mentioned previously. Changing the property back to an HMO is really not going to change the surrounding area. Almost the entire terrace and the terrace opposite are HMOs or flats, and there are several halfway houses too. I feel our situation is even more exceptional than just having HMOs on both sides because of the ongoing nature of the Salvation Army property. And the Salvation Army manager supports our application for that reason. I just really want to live in an environment where I feel safe for my children to play in the garden and where we can build relationships with our neighbours. But that isn't possible in this house, and we are stuck here at the moment because it won't sell. And that is why I'm asking that you approve our application. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Mrs. Partridge. Are you happy to take questions?
Yeah.
Has anybody got any questions to Mrs. Partridge?
Could I ask
Councillor
a question?
Williams, I've got
Yes,
a question.
Councillor Henson. Councillor Henson.
Mrs. Partridge, you mentioned the fact that you had complained to the your neighbour for who was, did you say halfway house? Was there nothing done? Did you go to the environmental health as well?
No, so when there's been problems, they do always speak to the people in the house next door, the current residents. But as I said, then a few months later, once they are adapted, if you look at the report, he explains, once they are adapted to sort of living in a social manner, they're moved on to a more permanent property, and then the problem starts again.
I see. Thank you.
Anybody else wish to ask a question?
Councillor Williams.
Councillor Williams, yes, go on then.
Mrs. Partridge, could I just ask you about the price reduction? It's 10,000 going from 300,000 to 290,000. I believe you purchased it for 180.
That is not a planning planning.
I just want to clarify why it's only gone down by 10,000.
Well, just because we've spoken to our estate agent lots of times about it. But again, he just kept on saying, every time we were thinking, oh, maybe we should drop the price, another viewing was booked in. So it never really feels worthwhile dropping the price when you've got another viewing sort of booked in the next week, but then that viewing would fall through. And then, so that's why there's sort of there's been no point where there's been, no interest, and that we sort of thought, oh gosh, the price obviously is the issue. And we haven't had any lowball offers either. No one's really mentioned the price. So yeah, he just felt that isn't an issue.
That is not the price of the property is not a planning issue. Thank you very much, Mrs. Partridge. Have anybody else got any points of clarification? If not, we will go to the debate on this one. I have a few people who've indicated they wish to speak. I would like, please. Right, I'll add your name to the list, Councillor Henson. Councillor Morse.
There's a lot. I have a lot of concerns about the application as it stands at the moment. Not least the fact that the price has only been dropped in the last month, and that essentially the housing market hasn't moved in the last month because people weren't really able to go and visit houses during lockdown. We have two policies in play that I think are relevant to this. One is the Article 4 that we've placed on that area to try and prevent more houses for multiple occupancy. And the other one relates to our purpose-built accommodation, where we have argued that the reason we make purpose-built accommodation is to prevent houses of multiple occupancy and to bring more of them back into the use as family homes. And I don't see how approving this application does anything to support either of those policies. So I find it really difficult without any sustained time at advertising it at a realistically reduced price that I can approve this application. I'm happy to argue for a deferral if that's what people would want, but I at the moment could not vote for an approval.
Thank you, Councillor Morse. Councillor Williams.
Councillor Morse took the words out of my mouth, so I won't repeat them. I agree with everything she said.
Right, Councillor Mitchell.
Thank you, Chair. Could I support again what Councillor Morse has said and Councillor Bialik at the beginning of this discussion? I think it's a matter of timescales here and this conflict between two sets of policies we have. One in regard to HMOs and returning them to normal, to family and traditional family use, and on this occasion a policy that gives exceptional circumstances to allow the opposite in effect to happen. And my concern, like others on this particular issue, is timescale. That the 1st of May a price reduction was made. We're now only on the 1st of June. The housing market is only slowly coming to sleep, and at best I could support a delay in the consideration of this. If not, I'd be forced to vote against it.
Thank you, Councillor Mitchell. Before I ask Councillor Henson to come in, I see Councillor Bialik, you have a suggestion to make.
Yes, Chair. I've put in the remarks column that I'm prepared to move a deferral for 3 months to make sure that we're satisfied on this point, and would ask that the applicants would agree this. If the applicants aren't prepared to agree this, then we will have to put this to the vote. And my view would be that I share the concerns of others. I'd be unlikely to accept it at this moment, but rather than put the applicant through all that added expense, I would assume, if there was an agreement to defer it for three months, for us to be proved wrong, and then we could then crack on. Thank you, Chair.
Right, I know it's unusual, but I need a seconder for that proposal.
I'll second this, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Bialik. I know it's unusual, but I will ask the applicant, Mrs. Partridge, if she is willing for us to defer this one. Can she still hear me, or has she been muted?
Yeah, sorry, I'm here.
Did you hear my question? I'm sorry. We have a proposal to defer this for three more months rather than refuse it now. To see if you can sell with the slightly lower price.
Well, I think I'm going to need to discuss it with my husband, because that would mean that it's been on the market for a full year then, and obviously that is a big impact on our life as a family.
The thing is, I mean, I feel that if we don't defer it, you may not get an approval.
Okay, can I have a few minutes to discuss, or is there no time?
Can you, of course you're in the same house as your husband, aren't you? You're not at a meeting place. Are you able to speak to him briefly? He's obviously listened to what's been said.
Yeah, he's here now.
I'll give you a couple of minutes to discuss it.
Chair, can I make a suggestion that I don't want to feel that we're browbeating the applicants. Perhaps we can move on to items 10 and items 11 and then come back to this one to give them time.
Are members happy with that?
Yeah.
Right, okay. So item number 10 is the list of delegated decisions. Unfortunately, Bindu has had to leave the meeting, and so Roger will be answering any questions that she might have had. Were there any questions?
No, I've not been notified of any questions in relation to the decisions.
Right, thank you. And item 11 was the appeals report. Is there anything to report on appeals?
No, not really. We haven't received any decisions since the last planning committee. There's been one new appeal made, which was a housing proposal in Kew Gardens, but that's it.
Right, thank you, Roger. Right, we now need to wait and...
Chairman,
hang on,
go on. After Councillor Henson, Chair.
Councillor Henson?
I would like to ask a question, Chairman. Is the fact that we are visiting no sites, is that put on hold, or is that because of the problem we're in?
Yes, because of COVID, we can't get into cars to go to site visits.
Of course not. No, all right, fine.
Chair, it's a procedural matter I would like to ask, and perhaps the planning officers will help us. I'm feeling that we're putting the applicants under pressure, and I don't want to do that, because that's not what we should be negotiating via Skype. If we move deferral, to ask the officers, if we move deferral for 3 months and that was accepted, should we just not put a time limit, or just move deferral, and then obviously the applicants would say to you, well, we're not happy with that, we want this to come back to the next meeting, and then we will decide it, or they may want to discuss to you a time period, and that would get reported back perhaps to delegated briefing. I think that would be a tidier way of dealing with it, Chair.
I support that.
Thank you, Councillor. Roger, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think that's helpful, Councillor Bialik. Just as a reminder to members, it's not the applicant's decision whether you defer an item or not. It's entirely up to you.
Yes.
But it does seem very sensible that rather than put a three-month time limit on it, that you just defer it. And if having discussed it with the applicant, they wish to have a decision, we could bring it back next month to the next planning committee, or alternatively, if they think it's in their interests to wait longer for a decision, in the hope that it might be a positive one, then we can leave it till a later meeting.
Yes,
Chair, I will move just a straight deferral. So I've caused a problem and I've now given an answer to my own problem. So I'll move a deferral, Chair.
I'll accept that. If you accept mine, Chairman,
yes,
too, please.
Thank you. Right, I think we will go to a vote on this, but could I suggest to members, it is on the main road on Mount Pleasant Road. If you happen to be driving or cycling or walking in that direction, just have a look to see where the house is, and I'm reminded that this was a house in multiple occupation before Mr. and Mrs. Partridge bought it. And it's a shame that they are having problems, but I can appreciate that they do have problems. So can we go for a deferral? And I will come back to Mrs. Partridge in a moment. Mark, can you do the roll call, please?
Thank you, Chair. So this is the vote to defer the item.
Vote to defer it.
Councillor Bialik, please.
4.
Councillor Branston?
4.
Thank you. Councillor Gassane?
4.
Thank you. Councillor Harvey?
4.
Thank you. Councillor Mrs. Henson?
4.
Councillor Mitchell?
4.
Thank you. Councillor Morse?
For the deferral.
Thank you. Councillor Sheldon?
4.
Thank you. Councillor Sparks?
Yes, for the deferral.
Thank you. Councillor Sutton?
4.
Thank you. Councillor Williams?
4.
Thank you. Councillor Lyons?
4.
That's a unanimous approval to defer the item.
So can I get back to Mrs. Partridge? I hope she has heard what we have just been saying. Can you confirm you've heard what we have decided?
Yes, thank you. Yeah, that's big.
So it's a case of we will defer it, and we haven't specified a time. I think we need to see how the market is going in the next couple of months to see if you can sell.
So what do you mean by that? I mean, because someone how much we reduce it by, and so is that going to come up, sort of, whether they think we should reduce it by slightly more, or
no? That is up to you how much should you reduce the price by, but I would suggest that you have a conversation with Lee Powell, the planning officer, in the next couple of days, and you know, if at the end of a month you feel that you're not getting anywhere, or you are, then come back to the planning people and say, can we put it back on the agenda?
Okay, thank you.
Are you happy with that? I know you're not happy, but
well, yeah, that's fine, thanks.
Right, thank you very much. Thank you very much, members. And that is the end of the meeting. Thank you all very much for your attendance. And we meet again, I think, the end of the month, don't we, Mark?
On the 29th, Chair.
That's what I thought. Thank you.
Chairman?
Yes, Councillor Henson.
Just before you go, I think we've got to be careful that we do not disclose or be caught for disclosing information. When Councillor Williams nearly said how much, that is private and that is not for us.
Which is why I stopped her.
Okay, thank you.